It's time for the Sports Blitz, the only live-streamed local sports show in Arkansas, with all the latest on the sports stories that matter to you.
Welcome into the Sports Blitz today on a Wednesday morning. Switching it up a little bit today. I am your host, Weldon Braxton. Mark Freeman is in studio as always. And then we got some guy behind the controls. I think his name is Matty or something like that. Matthew, Christopher, Jonathan, Anthony Lassiter behind the controls today. We have a great show planned for today, Mark, as we settle in here. A lot of talking about the NBA, things going on. The Western Conference is heating up. I want to get into that race today. Who's a pretender, who's a contender? Thunder, Clippers, Lakers. Blazers.
Lakers.
Slip of the tongue. Slip of the tongue. But we'll get into that. Evan Turner finally played his game with Indiana. So how does that change? Maybe I'm changing my perspective, Mark, on the Pacers. I've been respectful, but I've also been skeptical. Maybe I'm turning the corner now with Evan Turner. So we'll look at that as well. The Arkansas Razorbacks, huge basketball game tomorrow night against Kentucky. Well, I say it's huge. You could look at it two different ways. You could say, go, get beat, get over it, and don't make a big deal of it. Or you could say, hey, we're coming in. We have a chance to win a big game and pull off and shock the world and all that other stuff we like to say. So I guess it depends on how you look at it. We'll get into that. Also, the NCAA tournament conversation as it pertains to the Razorbacks. They've been hot lately. That's helped their standing. But, where are they in terms of the NCAA tournament picture? One of the teams they beat, the Minnesota Golden Gophers, got a big win against Iowa last night. So any team that you beat, if they beat good people, it looks good for you. So we'll look at that, Mark. But I want to turn it over to you because I know last night you nearly had a heart attack. You saw some exciting high school basketball as we turn to our local sports look. Mark, what did you see?
Well, I went to the Clarksville-Morrilton game last night. Now, Russellville, congratulations to those guys. Got a big win against Greenwood on senior night. Tony Jones locking up the victory with some free throws at the end. But I was in Clarksville for my Panthers, my alma mater, playing against Morrilton for the 1 seed out of the 5A West. It's a big game. It was a big game for both teams. Knowing that Morrilton had already beaten Clarksville once, having them back at home was going to be huge. Morrilton jumped out to a big lead. I think they were up 10 or 12 points in the first quarter before Clarksville was able to come back. It was one of those games where Morrilton was doing about what they did in the first game, where every shot they were taking was going in. They were getting every rebound. They were hustling to every loose ball, and they were just beating Clarksville all over the court. And then switch flipped in the late in the first quarter, where Clarksville got a couple dunks, got a couple fast breaks, and then in the second quarter they got it back close, and then Morrilton, to their credit, took an 8-point lead with just a couple seconds left in the first half. Freddie Lee hit a 3 at the buzzer to make it a 38-33 game in favor of Morrilton, and then in the second half Clarksville came out, and I think they went on it was at least 13-0 run to start the third quarter, and they went ahead and never looked back. It was an incredible performance. I talked a little while back, a couple weeks ago, about the game where I watched Pottsville beat Subiaco, and I hadn't seen a game like that in a long time where one team just played at a crazy level. Now, Pottsville played that way for about 3 quarters. Clarksville played that way for about a quarter and a half. But I don't think I've ever seen a high school team play like Clarksville did in the third quarter of last night's game. Scored 80 points. It was 80-66, not in the third quarter. 80-66 final, but they went on a 27-6 third quarter run. And basically, Morrilton scored, he hit 2 3-pointers in the last 3 minutes of the quarter. Or they go shutout for the entire quarter. Deontay Woodbridge, and I'm one of these days I'm going to get the huddle footage, and I'm going to show you. Clarksville had 9 dunks in the game. Deontay had 5 of them, or actually 6 of them. Jaron Thompson had 2, and my boy Bailey Patton got his dunk. Finally got one in a game that counted. He had one at Greenbrier, and he walked, so they didn't count it. This one last night, he got a steal at about half court and took it down two-handed throwdown. And I want to get these videos, and I want to put them together in a package, and you'll see, Coach Doug Carlskit sitting down on the end watching his boys, Freddie and Kendrick Lee, and, he's getting a show. These guys look like a college team out there throwing lobs and dunking on people and just playing an extremely, extremely great third quarter. Not taking anything away from Morrilton. They're going to be the 2 seed out of the 5A West. I wouldn't be surprised at all if those two teams met. They'd have to meet in the finals, but if they met later on, and Coach Davis pointed out, that he wouldn't be surprised if the 5A West had all 4 semifinalists. That's how good the 5A West conference is right now.
Wow, and that's something we've talked about, seems like from the beginning of the year when Coach Davis, and we talked to him, and he made us aware that Greenbrier would even be a team not to sneeze at. Not saying they'll be in the postseason making a run, but just as far as the depth of the conference, obviously Alma and Harrison as well. Now, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. This now positions Clarksville to win against Huntsville to lock up the league. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
And we talked about
Friday,
and we talked about the tiebreaker scenario and how I didn't like it, but it worked out for the Clarksville Panthers, and they move on. You mentioned Russellville gets the win against Greenwood as well. We have a caller on the line. Is that correct?
We got Mr. Jason Kilburn. He was at the game last night with me. He said he wanted to call in and talk about it. What's going on, Jason? I just hung up on him. I had him on the line. Hold on, Jason. Start over. We just hung up on you for a second. Start over. We missed what you said.
All right, you there?
Yeah, we got you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, go ahead.
You just talking about the game last night in Clarksville, man. It's unbelievable how quick they are. And not just both of the Lee brothers, but number one, I don't know what his name was.
Jaron
Thompson.
Thompson.
Was good too. And then that freshman was good, and then of course the big man liked the dunk. I mean, Clarksville really impressed me last night. After the first quarter, I sent you that message that I thought that Morrilton was a better team, because they seemed like they played a lot better together. They were running offenses and stuff, and Clarksville, all they wanted to do was go one-on-one. And, after that quarter, though, definitely you could tell that Clarksville was definitely the lot better team, in my opinion. And I don't see how Morrilton was before the game, I think they were number 1 in the state, correct?
Yeah. In the
I just don't see how they were the best team in 5A. Because, Clarksville just handed it to them. And talking about Freddie Lee, man, that sucker can go. I'm not saying that he could play in the SEC, but man, he's definitely better than D. Wagner in my opinion. And he reminds me of kind of like a Jason Harrison type that played at Ole Miss. I think he has the potential to play in the SEC. I think Tech got a steal when they got him.
I think they know that, too. I remember going back 4 years ago how Tech was looking at Freddie Lee, knowing that he can handle the ball against any pressure. They pressed Clarksville, and Clarksville was getting dunks every single time because he would just – he got the ball stolen from him once because he got double-teamed, didn't see the guy coming. But he seems like he's got eyes in the back of his head most of the time, so he is the straw that stirs that drink. Now, Jason, I do think, though, that Morrilton gets a little bit of a bad rap there for the third quarter because Morrilton played very, very well for about 2.5 quarters of that game. And going back to Morrilton, I don't think what you saw last night is indicative of a bad Morrilton team as much as a fired-up third-quarter effort from the Clarksville boys there in that game. Morrilton, you saw it in the first half. It seemed like they couldn't miss, and they were getting every rebound, out-hustling Clarksville with loose balls, and they were just doing everything that they could to give Clarksville trouble. So I have to give them a whole lot of credit. But then on the flip side, like you said, I have to give Coach Davis and these guys a whole lot of credit as well because they do sometimes tend to go one-on-one, but I think that's more trying to take advantage of the advantages that they have. Like they had Morrilton has a big kid, number 50. He's the round mound of rebound. He's probably 5'10". He seems like he gets every rebound. He probably weighs 250 pounds, and he just pushes people out of the way. Well, Clarksville has Jaron Thompson, who's 6'1", 160, but he can fly, and he can jump, he can move quickly, and they had the advantage there, so they just spread it out and let Jaron go to work, and he scored 23 points last night. So I think that the one-on-one game, it is a problem sometimes when Clarksville just relies on it exclusively, but I don't think that was necessarily what they were trying to do. They were trying to take advantage of mistakes. So, Jason, I'm glad you were impressed with my boys last night. I think if they play like that, they can beat anyone.
I think so, too. They're good. They're really good. They really impressed me last night. I know they've been good the last, 3 or 4 years, but, man, they really impressed me because I thought there would be some drop-off after Dedrick, graduated, but they really impressed me. And another thing on Morrilton, you was talking about number 50, and then my brother kept calling him the trash man because he's a trashy player. He knows where to get. He gets in good position. He's just always around the basket. He's always around the ball. He's a pretty good defender for somebody, that had to guard somebody that was, 6 inches taller than him, probably at least, or more. And I was really impressed with him. And another thing on Morrilton, though, I think what really hurt them is the first quarter, it seems like they were really attacking the basket. And after that, it just seemed like they were settling for the three-pointer, and their shot wasn't falling, after that first quarter. But and I think they kind of got back to that a little bit more in the fourth quarter, which by then, the game was already out of reach. But I think they should have attacked the basket more like they were doing early in the game.
Well, I agree. I think one of the problems with them is something that happens to a lot of people, Weldon. It's that when you see your first few shots go in, you think they're all going in, and you start settling for that. I'm more guilty than anybody, because if I see my first three go in, that's all she wrote for me. I may not take another shot inside the paint or inside the three-point line even. So I think Morrilton sort of fell in love with the three, and you live by the three, you die by the three. They have no advantage inside, and that was the thing. They had four guards, and Morrilton's guards, man, they had one kid I think he's number 22, who had arms like freaking Patrick Willis or something, just jacked, and he was a problem. So I like this Morrilton team. I think they can go very deep in the state playoffs.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what goes on in Class 5A, particularly in the 5A West, as they wrap up play and get ready for state tournament action. I agree with Freddie Lee. I mean, I think, I said it, he's the straw that stirs the drink. He's a guy who, from a talent standpoint, is certainly SEC caliber. Obviously the size is the issue there, but for Arkansas Tech, I think he's going to give people headaches in the GAC conference. But, Jason, while we have you here, we'll get back to local sports here in a second, but I got to get your take on the Arkansas game against Kentucky tomorrow night. As far as expectations, where we should be as fans, what can Arkansas do? What do you think about their prospects tomorrow night at Rupp Arena?
Man, it's going to be hard for Arkansas to win there. And, of course, Arkansas has got its woes of winning on the road, which, they've won 2 games this year on the road, which it's good. It seems like Mike Anderson maybe has turned that corner, but, playing at Rupp is probably one of the toughest places to play in the country, to go with, Cameron Indoor or, one of those places like that. But, I'm sure in the back of their mind, they're thinking about that loss that they had at Bud Walton. So I think it's going to be hard for Arkansas to get a win there. Do I think they can do it? Yeah, possibly if they keep playing the way they have been. But I really don't see it happen. I think it's going to be a good game. I think Arkansas will keep it in, probably 6 to 8 points. But I think Kentucky pulls it out at the end.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to breaking down this game here in just a little bit. Jason, you got anything else you'd like to address before we let you go?
No, I am going to say one thing. Weldon made me think of this the other day when the Missouri game was a 6 o'clock game, and I think that helped Arkansas out. With this being a 6 o'clock game at Kentucky, I think that also helps Arkansas out.
That's a good point. That is definitely a good thought. All right, Jason, man, thank you for calling. If you have anything else you want us to share, just send me a text. We'll share it over the air.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
There's Jason Kilburn. Got to watch my boys play last night, and I didn't get to ask him about Bailey's dunk, man. I lost my voice screaming when my boy got his dunk. This is a kid who's come to my church youth group for a long time. Watched him. I remember watching his first ever basketball game in like 3rd grade. When one of my best friends from high school was coaching that team in Pee Wee, and he was horrible. He was taller than everybody else, but he was terrible. And he's grown into a good player, and he's helping Clarksville out a lot. When Deontay Woodbridge got his 4th foul last night, and like I said, he had 6 dunks in the game. He was a big factor. I think he had 18. Whenever he got his 4th foul and Bailey came in there and was ripping down rebounds, got that steal and dunk, I could feel the place shaking. I could see people jumping up and down all around the floor. So he really, and it pretty much ended the game. When he got that dunk, it put him up, I think, 13 or 15, and it was just over from there. So big shout out to my boy Bailey Patton for the dunk there. But that's not all the high school basketball that we've got going on right now, Coach Weldon. Russellville, 2 wins in a row, beat Little Rock Hall, beat Greenwood last night on senior night. Good run for them going into the 6A. It'll be the 6A. Now, they're the 7A, 6A Central Conference in basketball during the season. Then they go to the 6A state playoffs rather than the 7A. Now, the 6A is very, very deep. They've got Jonesboro. They've got Little Rock Parkview. They've got some schools that are very, very good in the 6A. But Russellville going in on a little bit of a winning streak.
Yeah, don't even get me started on this classification conference / postseason situation. going on in 6 and 7. That's a whole nother ball of wax. But with Greenwood, Russellville took them down. A tough game. It looked to me, and I wasn't there, had some things going on, but the score was like 20-16 at halftime, and it was a low-scoring game. I know Greenwood ran some zone and kind of bogged things down, but it was a game for Russellville. I just think from a confidence standpoint, you couldn't afford to lose it. And I've said it many a times, when you're playing the Catholics, when you're playing the South Sides and the Greenwoods of the conference, you need to take care of business. They were able to do that. And so now we'll see what they do as we get ready for the 6A tournament, not 6-7A, 6A tournament. There are some teams in there. There's Little Rock Parkview, as you mentioned, a lot of teams that can play, Jonesboro. So, I mean, they'll have their hands full.
While we're looking at the state tournaments, he mentioned the Russellville 6A. It's not quite set yet, so we'll let you know when and where Russellville, well, it'll be in the same spot, but we'll let you know when and who Russellville plays on our show Friday in the 5A state tournament. Clarksville with the win against Huntsville on Friday, and that's not set in stone. Huntsville's not very good, but they're playing them on the road at Huntsville. It's never a fun place to play. From experience, I know it's not a fun place to play, but if Clarksville wins that game, they're the West's 1 seed. They'll play at 2:30 on Tuesday in Alma in the first round of the state tournament. If they win that game, they'll play at 8:30 on Thursday. If they win that game, they'll play at 1:30 on Saturday. So they'd get the day off between both games by winning and getting to the 1 seed. Morrilton locks up the 2 seed with the win Friday night. They'll play Thursday at 5:30, Friday at 8:30, and Saturday at 7:30 if they can win their way that way. They'll get in that second round game on Friday, in all likelihood, Jacksonville.
Morrilton will.
Morrilton would.
Yeah, that's a tough spot for the 2 seed, So I think this is what you were talking about the other day. Do you want those days off, or do you want to, avoid Jacksonville? I mean, Jacksonville, they're one of the big-time teams in Class 5A. And I know you have to go through them all anyway, but still, I think for Clarksville, it is an advantageous draw to be able to have things set up the way they are. Yeah, but we want to make sure they take care of business. And I think we agree they should take care of business against Huntsville because you don't want to leave the door cracked open for a Morrilton victory to clinch the conference either with the Clarksville loss. You don't want that to happen either. So I think Clarksville will be ready. I think it'll be a situation where they come out. I don't want to say they'll blow them out early, but I think they'll handle business.
They're going to try to. Yeah, they're going to try to hurry up and knock them out. And then moving down to 4A, it's just now regional basketball action. They'll start their state tournaments after this weekend's regional tournaments. Pottsville and Dardanelle both playing in, and actually Dover as well, in girls action, playing in the regional there, 4A North Regional, at Lincoln. On Wednesday, you've got the Dardanelle boys playing Prairie Grove at 5:30. You've got the Pottsville girls playing at 7 o'clock against Berryville. And then you move on to Thursday. You've got Subiaco from the 4A4 conference playing Lincoln at 5:30 before the Farmington-Dover girls game at 7 o'clock. And then the nightcap is the big one. In my opinion, it's the most important game. I say important, most impressive game and best evenly matched game. 8:30, the boys' game, Farmington-Pottsville, the 2-3 matchup there. Farmington, the 2 seed out of the 4A1, and Pottsville, the 3 seed out of the 4A4. And the winner of that game gets to go to the state tournament. The loser goes home.
Wow. I mean, that's what it's about when you get to Class 4A and below. Pottsville, I think they're a team who's worthy by most estimations to be a state tournament caliber team, but we understand, you've got to get out of your district, you've got to get out of your region because there's so many teams in 4A. We know they have to pare it down around the state, but Farmington's a good team, from what I've heard, limited, but I've heard some good things about them. They won't be an easy 2 seed. Obviously, they're a 2, so that tells you something right there. But Pottsville's a team we've followed all year long. We've talked about what they have offensively, trying to get more guys involved. Defensively, they've been solid, so that'll be something to watch for. The
Farmington Cardinals, the team that beat Pottsville by 1 point in the Alma tournament earlier on this year. I was talking to Coach Hill about this the other day, and he said, we're up 2, and they hit a 3 at the buzzer to win. That's a rough way to go in the I guess it was the consolation game of the Alma basketball tournament. I think it was a 5th place game there in the Alma basketball tournament. Now, the Pottsville boys got smoked by Gravett in probably the worst game they played all year. And I'm reading here on Fearless about how all these people from Gravett, Pottsville's not any good at all. Well, they played the worst game of the year against Gravett. Nobody realizes that Pottsville ran off from the first 2 losses. Now, they had a rough Christmas season pre-conference and then lost their first 2 games in conference. Did not lose another game in conference. They went all the way to the district tournament and lost to Subiaco. That was the first loss they'd had since the Subiaco Maumelle beginning of conference season. So Pottsville's as hot as anybody right now, and rolling into Lincoln, it's not going to be the same Pottsville team that they saw in Alma.
That's the beauty of high school sports. Technology has come a long way. We communicate through message boards, and there's Twitter, and it's better than what it used to be. But still, people, for the most part, aren't aware of exactly what's going on outside of their region. So it's always funny to me when people talk up what's going on in their area and the teams they watch, and, my team in my part of the state, nobody's beating them. They ran through our conference. Nobody's going to beat them. Then they go out and they lose to like a 4 seed from another conference they've never seen before. They're like, oh, well, what happened? And then people just start arguing and back and forth. My team this, and you, for the most part, Mark, I know you've seen some teams from other areas, but for the most part, these fans on these boards haven't seen what's going on in other regions.
That's why I love the trash talk. They're just like, you don't know. You haven't seen that team play. You just saw a score, and people were joking about this earlier about the transitive property. They see Team A played Team B and beat them real bad, so Team B's gonna and Team B beat Team C. Yeah. So we're gonna be, it's just like, guys, come on now. You got to figure out, the way teams are going right now. Just all kinds of different factors that work into this. So I'm looking forward to the 4A North Regional there in Lincoln and listening to and watching, hopefully, the Pottsville Apaches. Maybe the Pottsville Apaches and Dardanelle Sand Lizards can upset everyone, go all the way to the regional final. I know Pottsville lost last year in the regional final against Subiaco, and they were able to I guess it was semifinal, and they were able to go on and win the state tournament. So the things are setting up quite well for them right now. If they win that first game, they'll play Maumelle in the semifinals of the regional. That's a fun draw for them. But at least they'll have a chance to go to the state tournament if they win game 1. One more thing we need to make mention of. Talked about the Arkansas Tech Golden Suns and Wonder Boys rolling through on senior night the other night. I saw Coach K last night there at the game, and he was, poor guy, he got there a little late and it was packed, so he had to sit right in front of the pep band. And he was getting a trombone in the back of his head all night long, just loud. He and his son there watching the game.
Coaching to get VIP?
Seriously, he should have come and sat by me. He'd have got taken care of. They bring the warm towel and the cold water, and they just take care. No. They don't roll out the red carpet.
What they do for you?
They make me pay double. But Tech baseball, that's what I was going for there. Number 20 in one poll, as high as 17 in one poll there in college baseball Division II. So big shout out to the Wonder Boys on the diamond. I don't envy them trying to swing a bat in 25-degree weather this week, but they're rolling right now into the top 25. Arkansas Tech trying to win that all-sports trophy in the GAC. We've got plenty more on the Sports Blitz after this break.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. We've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
here's what you missed.
Updated news.
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
Developing stories.
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
And weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on. KARK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out rivervalleyleader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
KRK4 today.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
rivervalleyleader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out rivervalleyleader.com.
You are tuned into the Cogswell Motor Studio. The Sports Blitz is back for a second segment. Appreciate Jason Kilburn coming in, talking some local sports, talking about the Clarksville Panthers and their victory over Morrilton, as well as some other things going on locally. But Mark, the NBA, and that's something I want to look at, and it's not that time of year where we're really just hot into it yet. It's not playoff time, but there's some movement going on, some players here and there, and then there's some rule changes that could possibly be coming down the road, including, and I want to get your take on it, the possibility of adding a 4-point shot in the NBA. Just when I say 4-point shot, Mark, what do you think?
I think that you're going to have some guys shooting from way, way out, and you're going to, what we were talking about before the show, you've already got big men who are stepping out trying to shoot the three, and it's just a hideous looking shot. So you back them up even further, and you say, "Here's 4 points." You're going to have too many people who are tempted to shoot that shot from even further out. Now I know there are some guys who they've got all kinds of range, so I don't know. Would that mean that they would push the 3-point line in and put the 4-point line like somewhere behind where the 3-point line was, or what do they do? Because it would be interesting. It would make strategy in late game situations a whole lot different.
I mean, that was a good question about, are they going to move the 3-point line in or move it out? Maddie's playing that NBA on NBC music, and it's just bringing back memories.
Doesn't that make you hurt?
It's bringing back.
It's not there anymore.
Because just picture. I'm picturing like a regular. They did Sunday afternoon.
Oh yeah,
games,
Chicago, New York game.
Yeah, Chicago, New York, and now Michael Jordan walking into the gym. Marv Albert, they're going to take on the New York. I loved
Marv Albert.
Patrick Ewing says they're going to be ready. John Starks, what can he do against Michael Jordan? I mean, I just love the whole thing.
I'm watching for Anthony Mason and some of those guys, Charles Oakley, to throw an elbow in somebody's forehead. Yeah.
Oh man, those were the days. But look, the 4-point shot. Here's my concern. I feel like in a way basketball is bad enough. I'm not saying the quality of the game. I mean, we have stars, the LeBron, Kevin Durant. I mean, there's good basketball, but in terms of fundamentals, and please, don't confuse me with Bob Knight here. I'm not going to be an old fuddy-dud, but I will say this. You have guys right now who shoot about 50% on layups, now trying to shoot jump shots and have no business doing it now. You're just now enticing these guys to just jack up shots, and they can't make any of them. Now, there's an opposing argument to that, and I think it's worth listening to. As a coach, as a team, you have to evaluate that. Maybe it's your fault for getting players who are dumb enough or not skilled enough to take those shots. And maybe, that's a penalty to you. That's just part of the risk of having player X. Now maybe having J.R. Smith on your team is becoming even more of a penalty now because, Lord have mercy, we know who would lead the league in 4-point attempts. J.R. Smith would be jacking those things up like they're going out of style. And is he going to make 13% of them? Yeah, probably. I mean, what was he shooting now, like 20% now from the field?
He's the guy who I thought initially about. Listen to this ESPN.com story, and this is kind of where this information came from. They said they're talking about, thinking about expanding the floor, making the floor wider, longer, whatever, and then adding the 4-point play. And it says the mere notion in the NBA someday adopting a 4-pointer is believed to be an offshoot of a famed quote from then Boston Celtics star Antoine Walker, who reportedly answered a question about why he took so many 3-point shots by saying, because there are no 4s. I love that. And there will be some guys just like him who, if you could shoot it, if you have to throw it one-handed from the other end of the court to, score 9 points, they'll do it. That's just, they want to shoot the long, show how awesome they are shooting this long shot. And you're going to have a bunch. I mean, it's going to further dilute the quality of basketball, but you're going to have some guys, Steph Curry and Kyrie Irving, and some of these dudes who can shoot it from Mars, Jamal Crawford, who are going to become 4-point specialists. And, it's just going to it's going to change the game if they do it.
And I think that's where it comes down to. Is it going to be around where the 3-point line is now or further back when bumping up the 3 line, or are they just going to keep everything where it is and draw another line around it? I think that's something to look at. But here's my philosophy, and I said this when we talked about the tennis shoes that tied themselves the other day. I'll say the same thing. I'm all for inventions. I'm all for progression. Oh, look, there was probably a time, when they said a shot worth 3 points, blasphemy. I get that. But at the same time, things do have to progress. I'm not stuck in the past. But I do want to make sure that whatever changes are made, make sure they really improve the quality of life, if we're talking about tennis shoes that tie themselves, or improve the quality of the game, if we're talking about 4-point shots. That's my position. But we'll see how that goes. We'll follow that story. It doesn't sound like it's something that's imminent or even close to happening, but it has been thrown out there.
Our boy Jason doesn't like it. He said
4-point
shot equals stupid in all caps. So he doesn't like it.
Hey, we always appreciate Jason chiming in, and I can't say I don't necessarily disagree with him on that particular position. But staying in the NBA, the Western Conference is interesting to me, and I know it's mid-season. I know things are going to change, but we're at the point to where you need to sort of identify yourself as a contender or a pretender. And the Western Conference is loaded. Look, Dallas, they just beat the Knicks the other night. Dallas has been hot lately. I mean, they're 8-2 over their last 10 games. They're 35-23 overall. They're the 7th seed. Not 6, not 8, but they're the 7th seed in the Western Conference. Just gives you an idea of the depth. Oh, yeah, the Bobcats are 7th in the East, and they're 3 games below 500. Yep. So the West is tough, Mark. I'm looking at the standings now. I'll just read them off to you real quick, and then we'll talk about what we think of these teams. Number 1, Oklahoma City, followed by San Antonio, Houston, the Clippers, Blazers, Warriors, Mavericks, and Suns. Those are your 8 playoff teams if the season ended today. Help me out here. I'm trying to weed contenders from pretenders. Tell me who's a contender. Tell me who is kind of pretending.
Before I do that, I want to look at something real quick. Memphis is 31-24. Those 31 wins will put them number 4 in the East. They're a game out of the playoffs they're a game and a half out of the playoffs in the Western Conference. So looking at the West, as far as contenders, when I say contenders, I think about who can make it to the finals.
Right.
Because there's a separate conversation is who can actually beat Indiana and Miami, because I don't think I think San Antonio and Oklahoma City are the only two who could even have an argument of whether or not they could hang with Indiana and Miami, because I do think those two are the best teams in the league because of what they do defensively. San Antonio, I know they're doing some preventative maintenance on old Tony Parker, keeping him out, but they've had so many injury issues and ups and downs and things like that. I know Popovich is going to have them in the game, or in the series, no matter who they play. But I still favor Oklahoma City there out of the West. So I would say those two teams are the best two teams in the West, and in the East, it's a two-horse race. I mean, it's Indiana and Miami are within 2 games of one another. The next closest team is 9.5 games back of Miami. It's Toronto at the 3 seed. They're 7 games above 500. So, I think it's a 4-team race in the NBA right now. You've got Houston and the Clippers and Portland and Golden State and Dallas and Phoenix all in the playoff hunt out of the West, and they're all cute little stories. But right now, if you were to match up the Western Conference playoffs, Oklahoma City's going to run Phoenix. San Antonio's going to run Dallas. Houston's going to probably beat Golden State in a 7-game series where the average winner scores 150 points. And then the Clippers are probably going to choke against Portland because that's what the Clippers do. And then you're going to go on and you're going to end up with Oklahoma City and San Antonio in a great series in the end of the Western Conference. So I like the Western Conference and the layout right now. I do think that there are only 2 teams who could compete for a championship.
I agree with you. I think in the end, when you have who can advance and beat Indiana, who can beat Miami, I think it comes down to Oklahoma City and San Antonio. Now, I will say this. I think the door is open a little bit more if you want to talk about teams who can trip up those top 2 teams on the way. The Houston Rockets, to me, I don't trust them. But with James Harden, if he's hot, with Chandler Parsons on the wing, obviously Dwight on the wing, they're dangerous. I just don't think they have enough veteran leadership. The team to me that's interesting, I don't think they can win it because I think they have problems, are the Clippers. And here's why. The Clippers, to me, defensively are terrible, and that's ultimately their downfall. But I got to give Doc Rivers some props on this. He has turned Blake Griffin into almost a basketball player. And for that, I have to give him props. Does Blake Griffin still like to dunk mostly? Sure. I mean, that's Blake Griffin. But at least now he resembles somewhat of a basketball player in addition to being a dunker with Chris Paul. And Russell Westbrook still coming back for Oklahoma City Thunder, still getting in rhythm. But they did win at OKC the other night. But in the end, I think when Westbrook gets settled in, and with Kevin Durant and Ibaka, I think they're the best team in the West. I love watching the San Antonio Spurs, but I think it would be almost a replay of what we saw 2 years ago. San Antonio sliced and diced at times the Oklahoma City defense, but ultimately the athleticism, the explosiveness, and the dynamic play was too much. Now, I've heard some Spurs people say, well, James Harden was there. He's not there anymore. I get it, but I think the Thunder have gotten better. I think Kevin Durant's better. I think Westbrook is better. Ibaka's a whole lot better.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I mean, he is. Jeremy Lamb has emerged. You even got Perry Jones. I mean, so things have changed in the Thunder's favor, too, in addition to losing James Harden. So I'm with you. Just a lot of talk about the West. Portland, they're a year away. Golden State, look, Golden State's a team that, Mark Jackson, he's brought some confidence, brought a little swag to Golden State. But here's the thing with swag and confidence. It's okay early on, but in the end, you got to be able to have something substantial. I'm getting the feeling that the honeymoon with Mark Jackson's kind of worn off. Yeah, they shoot threes. They snuck up on people last year. Now it's like, we're supposed to be one of the top 4 teams. Now we're barely in the 6th slot. Mark Jackson, come on now.
I kind of feel bad for him because his personality hasn't quite. They say you're a representation of your coach, and they're not in any way. Like they just want to do nothing but shoot through. They don't care about anything else but score. They're like old school women's basketball where they want to play on 2 separate ends of the floor. You got these players down here for offense. They wouldn't have anybody on defense. They just go ahead and score. We're going to try to do. We're going to hit a 3 for your 2, and we're going to try to outscore you. That's just what they do. And it makes for fun games when they're hitting. It makes for them getting smoked in the playoffs, and that's just what happens. This is what they're going to do. They'll have a fun series, I'm sure, in the playoffs. But I kind of feel bad for Mark Jackson. I don't know if he can do anything about it. I mean, the way his team's built. I like David Lee. All right, I mean, he's going to get a bunch of rebounds, score some points. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, they're not going to take a step inside the three-point line if they don't have to. And nobody guarding anybody. So the West there, like you said, is pretty fun. I was having a conversation with Coach Garrett Hill yesterday about the Miami Heat in the East, and really the conversation centered around Jimmer Fredette. They're
That's what I was
talking
about to
about
talk
buying
about.
out Jimmer Fredette, and then the Sixers are talking about, now they traded Evan Turner to the Pacers for Danny Granger. They're talking about buying out Danny Granger, just really fire sale, start over there in Philadelphia with $1 million draft picks and all kinds of money. But they're talking about buying out Danny Granger, and if they'll do it within the next week, Miami can have their pick of Danny Granger or Jimmer Fredette to end the season and have them for a playoff run. I think it would be fascinating to me to see Miami get Danny Granger, a player from the Pacers who would know all the ins and outs of the system, and who would know what basically what could be done to offset. Now I know they're going to have to go out there and do it on the court, but to have that information, I think would be something. And then also Jimmer Fredette, he's a bomber. He's a 3-point shooter, nearly 50% from the 3-point line. He doesn't do anything else, but he might be a guy that Miami would look at too. So I'm interested to see how those two situations work out.
Look, I'm going to say it now. Granger to Miami would be interesting. Look, I'm a Jimmer fan. I've always been a Jimmer fan, and I'm still a Jimmer fan. Look, Sacramento is as dysfunctional as it gets. First of all, at one time they had like 42 point guards on the roster with Isaiah Thomas and Beno Udrih, and then they were trying to play some other guys at point guard too. It was just a mess. They didn't know what they were doing. I'm not saying that's a complete excuse for Jimmer, but look, here's a guy who we know he can shoot it. He can shoot it with rain. I mean, this dude, he'll come past the half-court line leaning forward,
range,
and he'll just pull up like nothing you've ever seen. But I think he's a capable ball handler. It's not like he's one of those guys that just has to stay put. This dude can handle the rock. He can dish it. He's made some nasty passes on people. I think Jimmer Fredette can play. I think he's got to be in the right situation. I think it's got to be with a team and a coach that's willing to almost give him the basketball team. I'm not saying he's Steve Nash. I know it's like every white crafty point guard we want to say is Steve Nash. Yeah. I'm not saying that, but in the end, you look at what Steve Nash was and what he did. The Mike D'Antoni, they handed the team over to him. I think when you have a guard like that, and there's a lot of trust. I mean, Jimmer Fredette doesn't scare you walking down the street as a great basketball player. But I think if you handed Jimmer a team and say, here, shoot, dish, run the team, I think Jimmer can ball. I think he's going to find a spot in this league. I've always believed in him. I still do.
Yeah, I was talking with Garrett about that yesterday, and he doesn't like Mario Chalmers. I always like Mario Chalmers because he makes the big play when it needs to be made. He can take the tongue lashing from LeBron and D Wade that he gets. It just seems like every game you see him walking off the court with his head down because they're just yelling at him. He's yelling back at him. He can take it, and he's helped lead them to 2 championships. So I like Mario Chalmers, but having a guy like Jimmer, maybe next year, whenever, I don't know if Ray Allen's going to be back. I don't know how the salary situation is going to work for them. They're going to have to make some tough decisions. It's kind of like Mike Miller. They're going to have to make some tough decisions, and somebody's going to have to go. If you're going to keep Greg Oden, if you're going to keep Michael Beasley, you're going to have to do something. So maybe a Jimmer Fredette could be a guy. I don't know. He may require more money, but he may take less to come play with LeBron and D Wade. That situation is going to be fun to watch because, will they opt in? Will they opt out? Will they take less money and bring guys in? Will the whole thing get blown up? So we'll have to see how the Miami Heat do. I think it kind of depends on whether or not it doesn't kind of depend. It definitely depends on how well they do at the end of this regular season and into the playoffs. So that's going to be a fun rest of the season. Real quickly, a couple other things. Across the wire right now, you saw that Aaron Hernandez got in a fight, an altercation in jail there. Somebody was apparently talking some trash to him, and he got a hold of him.
Aaron Hernandez, when we understand he's in high security, cut off from everybody else because he's a celebrity. We know celebrities are targets, but somebody talked some trash. He finally had an opportunity where he wasn't, I guess, isolated, and he had a chance to jump on somebody, and it went down from there. But I gave Aaron this piece of advice, Aaron. They make soap on a rope. Use it. That was my advice for Aaron Hernandez. That's all I'm saying. It's my advice to him.
Also in the NFL, former Arkansas Razorback Jason Peters signed a 5-year, $51.3 million contract today with the Philadelphia Eagles, staying with them. That's a big, big deal for Jason Peters, one of the best tackles in all of the NFL.
Yeah, Jason Peters, obviously former tight end with Arkansas, a sensational athlete. And you look at what Chip Kelly's trying to do with his offense. He's got athletic linemen. You draft Lane Johnson, another former tight end, to play. So we know what Chip Kelly's doing up front. Peters is a very good fit for that. He's been one of the best tackles in the game for years.
Jonathan Martin says he doesn't want to return to the Dolphins. Do you blame him?
Look, how much time do we have before commercial?
Just go ahead.
Look, Jonathan Martin, here's my feeling on him. I know a lot of people are, we felt sorry for him, then we got mad at him, now we're back to feeling sorry. I don't know where we're at, how we feel with Jonathan Martin. I will say this, though, if I'm looking at him, I understand what happened in Miami is extreme, even for an NFL locker room. I get that. But at the same time, I am at least concerned to a degree of can he take even what goes on in a normal locker room. I at least have those questions because I don't want my other 52 guys to walk on eggshells and feel like they have to be choir boys and say nothing in the locker room. That's going to do my team more harm than good. Again, I know what happened in Miami was extreme, but I've heard some mental type issues, some things that make me concerned about, is this guy equipped to handle any NFL-type locker room? That's something I'm going to have to really evaluate. If I feel good about that evaluation, then I would give him a chance, but I would be concerned.
I just want to say I think it's sort of a shame that that's the way we're viewing him, and it's fair because that's the way people are going to view him because it's gonna keep people from ever coming out with that kind of information again.
That's true.
You're going to see. You're gonna see. This is gonna sound horrible, and you're gonna not like it, but you're gonna see people killing themselves over stuff like that. You heard about bullying at every level. You're gonna see people who hurt themselves because they can't handle any more of the abuse and stuff like that. And just because Jonathan Martin comes out and says something about it, and he gets even more abuse, or he doesn't get another shot. We could be talking about any number of things. So
I'll just say this to that point. I think the thing with Jonathan Martin that kind of got me the wrong way was you got to handle it differently. You got to, if you really feel as though you're being oppressed or you're being picked on or whatever, you got to go to administration. You got to, if Joe Philbin said, get over it or didn't do anything, then I would understand him just running out. But any coach, any GM at any level will tell you, come to me. I'm going to talk to our guys this summer when I address our football team is if any of that stuff's going on and it's more than you can handle, you come to me. It'd be the equivalent of a player on our football team at Itasca having an issue like that, and they go straight to administration and say, oh, they're picking on me. Now administration thinks we're not doing our job as coaches, nobody. Yeah. I'm like, you didn't come tell me. So if he did tell Joe Philbin or anybody on the staff and they brushed him off, I get that. But I would like to know and then give me a chance to handle it. That's all I'm saying on that.
And my final word on the subject will be that I don't know if he went to the administration, but from to the coaches or whatever. But from the letters that I saw that he wrote to his parents, you could just see that he's sort of an emotional, seems like, kind of guy anyway, and he's also very introverted. He doesn't want to say anything. He doesn't want to stand up for himself, even though he could squash somebody like a bug. He's in the letters writing about how people call it, little people, just like he's a grown NFL offensive lineman. He's huge. And little people to him calling him the N-word to his face, and he won't do anything about it. And he was calling himself names to his parents. It was just like, man, to be inside his head, it would be tough because he's having to deal with some tough stuff. So while we're talking about the NFL for just one more moment before we go to break, Ron Jaworski says he wouldn't draft Johnny Manziel in the top 3 rounds. I sort of think this is an irresponsible opinion from Ron Jaworski because he followed that by saying, but I've only watched 5 games on the film. That's kind of, for a guy who won the Heisman Trophy, a guy who played 2 good seasons in the SEC, put up some big numbers, beat Alabama. They've been putting some guys in the league, I'd say. He's done some things. To say, I've watched 5 games, but I wouldn't even draft him in the top 3 rounds, that's a stupid thing to say, in my opinion.
Look, here's what I'll say to that. We have a tendency in sports to forget about prototypical quarterbacks, pocket quarterbacks who also fail. We like how many Blaine Gabberts and Brady Quinns, and we tend to think, well, you got to get a pocket quarterback because he'll succeed. it's a risk either way. You draft a mobile guy who's unconventional, there's a risk. You draft a pocket guy, there's a risk. Don't act like, well, I got to draft a pocket guy because there's no risk. Yeah, sure there is. Like I said, Blaine Gabbert, bust, Brady Quinn. But I mean, there's a number
how's
of
Christian Ponder working out for you?
Yeah, Christian Ponder. So, if you want to say you don't like Manziel, you don't like his game or whatever, fine. But don't give me the whole, pocket versus mobile. There's just more to it than that. Colin Kaepernick, same draft as Blaine Gabbert. You think Jacksonville wouldn't take Kaepernick right now for Blaine Gabbert?
I think you're right.
I mean, it's more to it. So.
All right, when we get back from this final break, we're going to go to Hog Talk, and we're going to talk about a record that my favorite player in the entire SEC, Marshall Henderson, might break of Arkansas importance. We'll talk about that in the Razorback basketball, baseball, and football teams right after this.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. We've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
KRK4 today.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
KRK4 today.
Final segment here on the Sports Blitz today in the Cogswell Motor Studio. We've had a great time today. Looked at some NBA, some things going on there. But now, Mark, it is our Hog Talk segment where we will be talking about all things pertaining to the Arkansas Razorbacks, including the basketball team's final push for an NCAA tournament berth. We told you on the top of the show they will take on Kentucky tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, as Jason Kilburn made the great point. The thing about it was the Missouri game, I did feel that was an advantage because the crowd's sort of restless. They're just getting in, getting off work. I'm not sure about Kentucky basketball, though.
Those people are going to be in the gym now.
Yeah, they're probably already there now. And then it's Jack Daniels and the Hills, and I got a feeling they're going to be ready at 6 o'clock. I'm just going to say that they're going to be ready in that arena at 6 o'clock. But win or lose, Arkansas will still be in the NCAA tournament conversation going down the stretch here, and It depends on who you ask in terms of whether or not they're a tournament team right now. CBS has Arkansas as a 12-seed play-in team. So according to their bracket, Arkansas would play Providence in the play-in game, the Midwest, for the chance to take on the Louisville Cardinals.
God.
Yay!
Look, I hate those, following the projections the whole time. I like, preseason, look at whether or not Lunardi's got us in or something like that. But following them every single game is just, to me, it's maddening and it's kind of crazy because, right now there are several different publications that have Arkansas in the tournament. Well, they play Kentucky tomorrow night on the road, and if they lose that game, they're not in the tournament anymore in anybody's eyes.
Right.
Then they'd have to go on and win those other 3 games, Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, to be back in consideration. And a lot of people say, that they'd have to win games in the SEC tournament as well to get back in consideration. So all I want to say is, look, Arkansas is in decent enough shape. They can control their own destiny for sure. If they go win at Kentucky, at that moment they're in the tournament. As of that moment.
Right.
But then the next game, if they lose, they're out of the tournament. So it's just like, we're wasting our time. I know it's good for us, entertainment, that we can talk about it, but everybody who's saying, Arkansas is in the tournament right now, who cares? Because they got 4 more games left, including a really tough one tomorrow at Rupp Arena. I asked today's CrossFit Russellville poll question, who do you have as a favorite to win the NCAA tournament today? Corey Williams said Michigan State, because he said if they can get healthy, they're the best team, most talented, most well-coached, and well-rounded team, a team that's been there and done that before. And they were a team that I watched early on, Weldon, and thought this team has got all the pieces and all the things that it takes. Hadn't heard a whole lot about them recently, but it's been because of the injuries and things like that. So you've got Arizona, you've got Kentucky, you've got Kansas, you've got all the traditional powers, Florida. Good Lord, they've won 18 games in a row, I think is what it is, or 20 games in a row. All their SEC games, number 1 in the country. Wichita State, 30-0, first team ever to go 30-0 in the regular season. You've got a bunch of teams right now in consideration is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mark. And if I had to pick a team right now that I really like, I got to go down with my boy Billy, Mr. Eddie Munster himself. I got to because, look, defensively, they are lights out. That's sort of been a change in Billy Donovan's, I don't say his philosophy. He's always been a pressure defense kind of guy, but he's tried to play pressure defense and then have a bunch of shooters and try to do it all at once, but they weren't quite as good in their consistent half-court defense. He's sort of more so sold out. They can still score, but he's sort of made sure they really have a lot of length, a lot of athleticism. He's really made sure they're really good on defense, and their pressure defense, when they dial it up now, they don't press as much as an Arkansas or a VCU or anything, but Florida does press, and when they do, they can be disruptive. They can bother people. Wilbekin's one of the best point guards in the country in terms of running a team and making big-time plays. If I had to lean right now, I got to go with the Florida Gators.
I think Wilbekin's the SEC Player of the Year. Would you disagree?
I mean, I'm just thinking about it in my head. I don't see why not. I mean, there's some good players, but what they've done from a winning standpoint is what really separates them from me. So, yeah, I couldn't disagree. I mean, Missouri's got a lot of talent, but they're not winning a whole lot. They're kind of splitting the duties there. So, yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
One other thing I wanted to talk about is something that's going around. I guess it's Stuart Mandel from Sports Illustrated, or who's he from? Where's he from? I don't want to give him the wrong credentials. He's a national sports writer, and he's talking about Brett Bielema and how he has, quote-unquote, damaged his reputation. Yeah. Does that matter to you? I mean, if it hurts in recruiting, then, yeah, that's a bad deal. But at this point, man, he made a mistake. He shouldn't have said what he did about the Cal player who died, and all bring death certificates and that kind of thing. But do you think it's really that big a deal, or do you think it's being overblown?
I don't think it's that big of a deal this particular instance, but I'll say this for Coach Bielema. I like him. I like the confidence. I like the brashness that he brings to the table. But there is a part of me that does want him to scale back overall. Not this particular instance, but just the whole thing. He's been a guy who he's taken some jabs. We know he and Gus Malzahn have had their deal. We know a lot of people disagree and they don't believe his sincerity when it comes to the 10-second safety rule. Seems like there's a lot of little things adding up for Coach Bielema, which is fine when you're winning 10, 11 games at Wisconsin. But now you're in the SEC. Now you're 3-9 the last season. Now you kind of look like a bully that can't win games. I'm not saying he's all the way there yet, but I just want him to kind of scale back and get this thing turned around before you kind of brash, because it's really rubbing some people the wrong way.
Yep.
But I believe in his coaching ability. I believe he can get it done. It's just that right now his mouth is kind of get out in front right now.
Yeah, man. He's a guy who that's him. That's the way he is. He's gonna say what he thinks, and he said it more than once. I don't say anything I don't believe. So I do think that was a mistake what he said, and he apologized for it. So I just get over it and go past it. I think that there are a lot of people who are just trying to stir up junk. Like, oh well, I'm gonna get myself interviewed on statewide radio or nationwide radio by writing a story saying this. So I don't really care too much for that whole conversation, but we'll see if Arkansas stinks again this year and they have a terrible time in recruiting, and there'll be something to it. So we'll see how Brett Bielema can rally from what doesn't look great right now. Finally, before we get out of here, we have run out of time. The Arkansas baseball team, now number 24 in the country, 6-0 after 2 early season sweeps. They've got South Alabama Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a 4:05 first pitch on Friday, 12:05 on Saturday, 1:05 on Sunday. I had the rotation. I know Trey Killian's coming back from his 6-game suspension. That's a freaking joke.
Yeah.
NCAA needs to go away. But the whole suspension in itself was stupid. But I know he's going to be starting one of the games. So Arkansas getting one of its good pitchers back in the rotation, trying to go on to 9-0 and move on before the SEC baseball season starts.
Yeah, and we understand Arkansas is playing some opponents right now that are a little bit inferior. So if we want to see what they do offensively, want to see if they're improved offensively. We also want to see if the pitching staff can recover. We understand they're young. We understand they're replacing a lot of players. But who knows how it's going to shake out. Maybe these young guys can actually pitch at an SEC level, and maybe the offensive players are better than what we've seen in the past. But for right now, I want to see them win and continue to get better.
All right, that's all the time we've got for today. We appreciate you bearing with us. Covered a lot of ground today, and we want to do the same thing on Friday. Hopefully we're talking about a big Razorback basketball win. We'll cross our fingers, but we won't hold our breath for the Razorbacks there in Rupp Arena on Thursday night. We've got plenty of stuff that we'll be talking about on Friday. Hopefully a couple of basketball wins. Pottsville, 6 o'clock. Or it's 8:30 on Thursday is the boys against Farmington. Girls playing at 7 o'clock on tonight against Berryville. So hopefully they'll get some wins in the 4A North basketball regional there, and we'll get to talk about some of that on Friday. Thank you for joining us today. For Weldon, who did a good job introing us, by the way, every break, and Maddie, I'm Mark saying so long. We'll see you at 11 o'clock on Friday.